All right, so listen to that. We're going deep on the Chupacabra today. I know you guys wanted to hear more about this one, and believe me, the mystery goes way back. We've got some excerpts from an article. It's called Chupacabra Sightings in Texas, the blood-sucking legend that haunts the night. And it's a wild ride between spooky stories and maybe some science, too. So
Yeah.
are we dealing with a real cryptid, or what's the deal with these creepy stories?
Yeah. What's really interesting to me is like how these legends kind of show how we need to explain things, even when we can't. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, especially in places where things are isolated, where weird stuff happens and you hear weird noises, people start to come up with stories. It's like our brains are wired to fill in those blanks with something, anything, just to make sense of what we don't know.
Okay, so picture this. It's the 1990s in Puerto Rico. Farmers are waking up and their livestock are dead, totally drained of blood, and there are these weird puncture wounds. And that's how this whole thing gets started, right?
Totally. And then it's like the legend just explodes from Puerto Rico, goes all the way to the U.S., and Texas becomes like Chupacabra Central. And here's the thing. As the story spreads, the descriptions of the Chupacabra, they start to change. Some people are saying it's spiky and reptilian, and others are saying it's more like a dog, but hairless with glowing red eyes.
It's like a game of telephone, right? The story changes a little each time it's told, but all these different descriptions really make things confusing. I mean, are we talking about a bunch of different creatures? Are people just misidentifying stuff? Or is it all just our imaginations going wild?
That's the big question, isn't it? Could it be that people are seeing what they expect to see,
Hmm.
especially when they're scared? It's definitely possible. But then there's the skeptic's point of view, the whole coyote thing.
Right. The idea that it's just coyotes with mange, which is that skin condition that can make them look super freaky and hairless.
Yeah.
And then to make things even more confusing, there's the DNA tests. They've done tests on some supposed chupacabra bodies, and they come back as coyote DNA. So does that mean it's case closed?
Well, not so fast. While the DNA evidence is pretty convincing, there are still some things that don't quite add up. Mange can explain why they look hairless, sure, but it doesn't really explain their behavior. Coyotes with mange, they're usually weak and kind of out of it. Not exactly known for being super precise when it comes to draining blood. Plus, DNA testing, while it's a great tool, it's not perfect. There's always a chance of messing things up or misinterpreting the results, so there's still some room for doubt.
Oh, that's a good point. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating, right? It's like a puzzle with some missing pieces.
Hmm.
So you mentioned the different descriptions, but let's get specific. The article talks about the Elmendorf Beast from 2004. This rancher shot this weird creature, blue-gray skin and fangs. Some people thought for sure it was the chupacabra. Others said, nope, just a mangy coyote. What do you think?
Well, the blue-gray skin could definitely be a sign of really bad mange. As it gets worse, it can cause the skin to change color and get thicker, which might explain why it looked so strange. Plus, coyotes do have those big canine teeth. It's easy to see how someone could mistake those for fangs, especially if they were in a scary situation.
That makes sense. But then there's the Cuero incident from 2007. This farmer finds all these dead chickens all drained of blood. And then she finds this hairless dog-like creature. Again, the DNA test said coyote. But people still aren't so sure.
The thing about these cases, and I think this is really important, is how they affect people emotionally. Even if there's a scientific explanation, the fear and the mystery, they stay with you. Imagine finding your animals dead like that. It would definitely make you question everything you thought you knew about the world.
Absolutely. And it's not just these isolated incidents either. Chupacabra sightings, they haven't stopped even with all our technology. In fact, with smartphones and social media, it's almost like the sightings have changed. We've got all these blurry videos online, people arguing on social media. It's like the Chupacabra has gone viral.
It's kind of a weird situation, isn't it?
Yeah.
We think of technology as all about logic and facts. But now it's part of spreading a legend that's all about mystery and the unexplained. But at the same time, technology is also giving us new ways to look into these claims. We have better cameras, more advanced DNA testing. It makes you wonder, has the internet made us more likely to believe in cryptids? Or less likely? Or maybe it's just changed how we think about them.
I think that's a really important point. Technology is like a two-sided coin in this case. It can blow these stories way out of proportion, but it can also help us look at them more objectively. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this whole phenomenon? Do you think the chupacabra is real? Is it just a misidentified animal? Or is it all in our heads?
That's a tough one. And I don't think there's an easy answer. But I do think it's important to remember that there's a lot we still don't know about the world. And that's okay. It's part of what makes life interesting. I think the important thing is to be a little skeptical, but also keep an open mind. We need to be willing to question what we think we know and consider other possibilities.
That's a great way to look at it. So we've talked about where the Chupacabra legend comes from, the whole coyote versus cryptid debate, and even how technology plays a role. It's a lot to take in, right? But before we go any further, let's talk about why we're so fascinated by cryptids like the Chupacabra in the first place.
Yeah.
Why are we so drawn to these creatures even when there's a good chance they don't exist?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about before, that need to make sense of the world. When we come across something that doesn't fit into what we already know, it makes us curious.
Yeah.
We want things to make sense. We want patterns and explanations. And when we can't find a logical explanation, our minds sometimes come up with something more fantastical, something that sparks our imagination.
It's like they say, nature abhors a vacuum, and it seems like our minds do too. We're always
Right.
trying to figure things out, even if it means making up our own explanations.
And there's something about the chupacabra specifically that really plays on our fears. This idea of a creature that stalks around at night preying on helpless animals. It's like something out of a horror movie. And for some people, that fear is mixed with a sense of awe and wonder. It's the thrill of thinking that there might be something more out there, something that challenges what we know about the natural world.
So it's not just about being scared then. It's also about the mystery, the allure of the unknown. It's about that part of us that wants to believe there's still some magic left in the world.
It's like we're hardwired for these stories, especially the ones that blur the lines between what we know and what's out there.
It really is.
Yeah.
Speaking of stories, let's get into some actual chupacabra encounters. I mean, we've talked about the basics, but I want to hear about some real cases, especially those that happened right here in Texas. The article mentions how Texas seems to be like a chupacabra hotspot. Why do you think that is? Is it the wide open spaces? The ranching culture?
Probably a bit of both, you know.
Yeah.
Texas has all that vast open land. Sometimes it feels really desolate. It's the perfect setting for stories about mysterious creatures hiding in the shadows. Plus, there's a strong ranching tradition here, so people are more aware of their livestock. They're more likely to notice if something strange is going on.
Right. It's like the perfect combination of environment and lifestyle. I remember reading about that Cuero incident from 2007, the one where the farmer found those dead chickens and that hairless dog-like creature.
Yeah.
Even though the DNA said coyote, she didn't buy it. It makes you wonder, what if there's more to these cases than we think?
See, that's the thing about these encounters. Even if there's a perfectly normal explanation, the emotional impact can be huge. Imagine that fear of the unknown, the feeling that something is out there hunting your animals, maybe even you. It's really unsettling.
Definitely plays on some of our deepest fears. But let's change gears for a second. I'm curious about the role technology plays in all this. On one hand, you've got all these grainy videos popping up on YouTube fueling the Chupacabra legend. But on the other hand, we have better tools for investigating things like DNA analysis and better cameras. Has technology made us more or less likely to believe in cryptids like the Chupacabra?
That's a tricky question. I think technology is kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to mysteries like this. On the one hand, it can amplify and spread stories and make them seem more real, more widespread. Just think about how fast a single blurry photo can spread online and capture everyone's imagination. But technology also gives us the tools to debunk those same stories, to really analyze the evidence and separate fact from fiction.
It's almost like technology is reflecting our own beliefs back at us. It can magnify our fears and our fascination with the unknown, but it can also give us a clearer, more objective way to look at those fears.
Exactly. It's not just about proving or disproving the existence of the chupacabra. It's about how we approach the things we don't know, how we weigh the evidence, and how we form our beliefs in a world overflowing with information. Some of it true, some of it not. And this brings us back to the heart of our discussion. Why are we humans so drawn to cryptids like the chupacabra in the first place? What is it about these creatures that captures our imaginations?
I think it's that natural curiosity we have, that desire to believe there's still something out there that we haven't figured out yet. In a world that feels more and more mapped and measured, the Chupacabra represents something wild, a reminder that mystery still exists.
It's like a rejection of the ordinary, a longing for something beyond the everyday. And in a way, it's a tribute to the power of storytelling. These legends, whether they're based in reality or pure imagination, they speak to our deepest fears, our hopes, and our fascination with the unknown. They remind us that we don't have all the answers, and sometimes the best stories are the ones we can't quite explain.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to pin it down, but the more we learn, the less we actually know.
It's like it feeds on our uncertainty on the things we don't know. But hey, let's talk about something else for a minute. What about the chupacabra in pop culture? We've talked about sightings and all the science stuff, but this thing has become a cultural icon, hasn't it?
Oh, totally. I mean, it's been in movies, TV shows like The X-Files, Supernatural, even comic books. It went from this obscure legend to something everyone knows. Why do you think this creature in particular has become so popular?
Well, it looks pretty scary, right? I mean, this image of a blood-sucking monster, whether it's like a reptile or a dog, it really taps into our deepest fears.
Yeah.
But I also think there's something about the chupacabra being like an underdog that we connect with. It's a creature that doesn't fit in anywhere,
Hmm.
a symbol of everything we don't understand and everything that's misunderstood.
It's like the ultimate outsider, a creature that doesn't belong. And maybe in a way we see a little bit of ourselves in that. We've all felt like we don't fit in at some point, haven't we?
Absolutely. And the chupacabra, with its mysterious origins and the fact that science can't really explain it, it represents that feeling of being different. It lets us explore those feelings in a safe, fictional way. But beyond all the pop culture stuff, there's a bigger question here. What does our fascination with the chupacabra tell us about ourselves? About how we relate to nature and the world around us?
That's a really good question. I mean, we live in a time where science is so advanced, we're always learning new things, but we're still drawn to these stories of unexplained events, these glimpses into the unknown. It's like we need a little mystery in our lives, something to remind us that we don't have all the answers.
I think you're right. The chupacabra and other cryptids like it, they remind us that there are limits to what we know.
Yeah.
They challenge us to question what we think is true, to be open to the possibility that there might be things out there that we can't explain, at least not yet.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the chupacabra, what's the main thing you want our listeners to take away from this? What do you hope they'll think about long after this is over?
I think the most important thing to remember is this. The world is a much stranger and more amazing place than we often realize. There are still mysteries out there, stories waiting to be told, creatures hiding just beyond our understanding. And that's something to be excited about, not afraid of.
That's a great way to put it. So to all our listeners out there, the next time you hear something rustling in the bushes or you see a shadow in the night, think of the chupacabra. Remember that the unknown isn't something to be scared of. It's something to explore, to question, to embrace. Keep that curiosity alive, and you never know what you might find happy investigating.